The message on my phone changed everything. It wasn't a text from Julian, not a last-minute "I love you" before our wedding. It was a photo, blurry at first, then painfully clear. Julian, my fiancé, laughing with another woman, his arm casually draped around her, in a cafe that definitely wasn't in New Orleans. My heart, which had been beating a joyous rhythm all morning, suddenly seized, a cold, hard knot forming in my chest. This wasn't just a bad dream. This was the day my life shattered, just hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. My name is Isabel Moreau, and on that Saturday, May 18th, I was supposed to become Mrs. Thorne. I was 30 years old, a pastry chef with my own charming little shop, Sweet Nothings, nestled in the Garden District. Julian, 32, was a promising civil rights lawyer. We'd built a life together over 3.5 years, sharing a beautiful apartment, dreaming of a future filled with the sweet scent of my baking and the justice he fought for. Our wedding was set for that very afternoon, an intimate affair in the picturesque courtyard of a historic French Quarter mansion, complete with the soft melodies of a jazz band and the intoxicating aroma of jasmine. Everything was perfect. Or so I thought. The morning had started like a dream. The golden sun streamed through the lace curtains of our bedroom, painting the antique furniture in warm hues. I woke up with a flutter of excitement, a nervous energy that made my hands tremble slightly as I sipped my coffee. Julian wasn't there, of course. He'd gone out the night before for a bachelor's send-off with his closest friends. He'd promised to be back by dawn, bright-eyed and ready for our big day. But dawn came and went. Then mid-morning. My phone, usually buzzing with his good morning texts, remained stubbornly silent. At first, I told myself it was just nerves. Maybe he'd overslept at a friend's place. A last-minute panic attack, perhaps. It was a big day, after all. But as the hours ticked by, a cold dread began to seep into my bones. I called his phone, straight to voicemail, again and again. Each ring, each automated message, was a hammer blow to my fragile composure. My bridesmaids, my mother, they all tried to reassure me, their voices laced with forced optimism. "He's probably just stuck in traffic, darling. Maybe his phone died." But I knew. Deep down, a primal instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. Colette, my best friend since childhood, arrived around 10 a.m., her journalist's intuition already on high alert. Colette, also 30, was a sharp, no-nonsense investigative reporter for a local New Orleans paper. She took one look at my pale face and the frantic energy in my eyes and knew. "Isabel," she said, her voice calm but firm, "tell me everything." I poured out my fears, the unanswered calls, the gnawing anxiety. Colette, ever the pragmatist, immediately took charge. "Give me his friends' numbers. I'll make some calls. You try to breathe." While I tried to focus on the intricate lace of my wedding gown, hanging pristine in the closet, Colette worked her magic. I could hear her in the living room, her voice a low murmur, then sharper, more insistent. She was a force of nature, tenacious and resourceful. Exactly what I needed in that moment of spiraling despair. I clung to the hope that she would find him, that he would walk through the door with some ridiculous, easily explainable story. A flat tire, a forgotten phone, anything. But the silence from Julian's end was deafening, a void that swallowed all my hopeful excuses. Then came the text. Not from Colette, but from an unknown number. A single photo. It was a candid shot taken from a distance but unmistakable. Julian. And next to him, laughing, her hand resting on his arm, was Serafina Dubois. Serafina. The name was like a bitter taste in my mouth. Julian's ex-fiancée, a digital influencer with a perfectly curated life, and a history with Julian that was, to put it mildly, tumultuous. They'd dated for years before me. A whirlwind romance that ended in a dramatic public breakup. I'd always thought she was a ghost of the past, a chapter closed. But there she was, undeniably real, undeniably present. The cafe in the photo had a distinctive wrought iron railing and a view of the Mississippi River. Colette, overhearing my gasp, snatched my phone. Her eyes narrowed as she zoomed in. "Baton Rouge," she muttered. "That's the Café du Monde, there, on the riverfront. Less than 2 hours away. My world tilted. Baton Rouge. Not a traffic jam in New Orleans, not a forgotten phone. He had actively left. He had driven to another city. To her. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just that he was with another woman. It was the sheer audacity, the callous disregard for me, for our day, for everything we had built. My wedding dress, once a symbol of joy, now felt like a shroud. The jasmine scent, which I had loved, now seemed sickly sweet, mocking my shattered dreams. How could he? How could the man I loved, the man who had promised me forever, do this? A searing anger, cold and sharp, began to replace the initial shock. Colette, seeing the raw pain in my eyes, put an arm around me. "Isabel, I'm so sorry." Her voice was soft, but her journalist's mind was already racing. "We need to confirm this. I have contacts in Baton Rouge. We'll get to the bottom of it." But for me, the bottom had already fallen out. The image of Julian's carefree laughter with Serafina, while I stood here, a bride abandoned, was burned into my mind. It was a betrayal so profound, so utterly humiliating, that it felt like a physical wound. My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of this nightmare. All the little things I'd dismissed, the late nights Julian spent working, the vague excuses, the times he'd seemed distant. Had she been there all along, a shadow lurking in the periphery of our perfect life? The thought made my stomach churn. I had given him my heart, my trust, my future, and he had, apparently, tossed it aside for a fleeting moment with his past. A single question echoed in my mind, cutting through the haze of shock and grief. What kind of man does this on his wedding day? The answer, I realized with a chilling clarity, was not the man I thought I was marrying. And as the anger solidified, a new, dangerous resolve began to form. This wasn't just about Julian. This was about me. This was about reclaiming my dignity, my story, from the ashes of his betrayal. The wedding might be off, but the show, I decided, was far from over. I was not going to be the weeping, abandoned bride. Not today, not ever. The phone in my hand vibrated, startling me out of my daze. It was an unknown number, but my gut told me exactly who it was. I took a deep breath, the scent of wilting jasmine now a cruel reminder of what was supposed to be. "Hello?" My voice, surprisingly steady, betrayed none of the turmoil raging within me. "Isabel! Oh, thank God you answered." Julian's voice, frantic and laced with a pathetic blend of panic and feigned remorse, assaulted my ears. It was the voice of a man caught, not a man genuinely sorry. "Baby, listen. I can explain everything. It was a moment of weakness, a stupid, idiotic mistake. Serafina, she manipulated me, I swear. She just showed up and things got out of hand." My grip on the phone tightened, my knuckles turning white. "A moment of weakness?" I repeated, my voice dripping with acid. "On our wedding day, Julian? With your ex-fiancé? 2 hours away in Baton Rouge? That's quite a moment, wouldn't you say?" The sheer audacity of his excuses was almost comical, if it hadn't been so utterly devastating. He sounded like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar, blaming the cookie. He stammered, his excuses tumbling out in a desperate torrent. "No, no, Isabel, you don't understand. I love you. Only you. Serafina. She's always been trouble. She cornered me. She played on my vulnerabilities. I was just trying to be polite, to get rid of her. And then it just escalated. I swear I was coming back. I was always coming back to you." The words were hollow, devoid of any genuine conviction, a transparent attempt to salvage his rapidly sinking ship. He was less concerned about my broken heart and more about his shattered reputation. The promising civil rights lawyer, caught in a scandal on his wedding day. The irony was not lost on me. Colette, who had been listening intently, raised an eyebrow, a silent message passing between us. Don't fall for it. I wouldn't. The Isabel who had loved Julian unconditionally was gone, replaced by a woman whose heart was a battlefield of betrayal and whose mind was now razor-sharp. "You love me?" I asked, a dangerous calm settling over me. Then why were you laughing with her, Julian? Why were you holding her hand in a public cafe, knowing I was waiting for you in my wedding dress back home? The image flashed in my mind again, fueling the cold fire within. Don't insult my intelligence. You made a choice. And now you're facing the consequences. He paused, probably realizing his pathetic pleas weren't working. Then, a new tactic. Isabel, please. I'm on my way back now. I'm leaving her. I'll be there. We can still do this. Please just wait for me. I'll make it up to you. I'll prove my love. Just give me a chance to get there. The desperation in his voice was palpable, a desperate plea from a man trying to outrun the inevitable. He wanted to save face, to avoid the public humiliation of being an abandoned groom. He wanted to pretend this never happened, but I wasn't about to let him. A wicked idea, born of pain and a fierce desire for justice, began to crystallize in my mind. I looked at Colette, a mischievous glint in her eyes reflecting my own. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my narrative, turning his public humiliation into my public triumph. "All right, Julian," I said, my voice surprisingly soft, almost alluring. "I'll wait." A relieved sigh escaped his lips. "Oh, thank you, Isabel. Thank you. I'm almost there. I'll be there as fast as I can." "But," I interjected, my tone hardening slightly, "you will arrive alone, without Serafina, and you will be ready to face everyone, every single guest who has gathered here today to witness our union. And you will look me in the eye when you get here. Do you understand?" There was a beat of silence, a flicker of hesitation on his end. He knew what I was implying. He knew the gauntlet I was throwing down, but he was trapped. His reputation, his career, everything was on the line. "Yes, Isabel. Yes, I understand. I'll be there. Alone. I promise." I hung up, a slow, predatory smile spreading across my face. Colette was already grinning. "So, the abandoned bride becomes the architect of her own destiny, eh?" she mused, a twinkle in her eye. "What's the plan, chef?" "The plan," I began, my voice low and steady, "is to turn this disaster into the sweetest revenge New Orleans has ever seen. He wants a ceremony? He'll get one. Just not the one he expects." My mind was buzzing, connecting dots, envisioning a scene that would forever redefine my future. Colette, ever the strategist, immediately understood. We need a twist, something grand, something that doesn't just expose him, but elevates you. She paced for a moment, then her eyes lit up. "Dominique Chevalier." My breath hitched. Dominique Chevalier, my former mentor, the renowned New York chef, a culinary legend. He was 35, charismatic, and had taught me everything I knew about pastry. He was supposed to be a guest, flying in from New York specifically for the wedding. "Dominic?" I asked, a spark of hope igniting amidst the ashes. "What about him?" "He's been talking about expanding, opening a new chain of luxury patisseries," Colette explained, her journalist's brain already piecing together the narrative. "He always admired your talent, Isabel. Said you had a unique vision. What if this isn't a wedding anymore? What if it's a launch party?" The idea hit me with the force of a revelation. It wasn't just good, it was brilliant. It was audacious. It was me. To transform the stage of my humiliation into the platform for my professional triumph. To turn Julian's betrayal into the very catalyst for my dreams. "Colette," I said, a genuine smile finally gracing my lips. "You're a genius." "I have his number," she said, already pulling out her phone. "I'll call him. I'll explain the situation, delicately, of course. Tell him you're about to embark on a new, exciting chapter, and you need his support, and his business proposal." As Colette stepped away to make the call, my gaze fell upon my wedding dress again. It was still beautiful, still pristine, but it no longer represented a future with Julian. Instead, it represented a past I was ready to shed. I walked over to my closet, my movements deliberate. I pulled out a sleek, elegant black cocktail dress. It wasn't white, it wasn't innocent, and it certainly wasn't for a bride. It was for a woman who was about to take control. The next few minutes were a blur of whispered conversations with Colette. quick decisions, and a growing sense of exhilaration. Dominic, true to his nature, was immediately on board. He was a man who appreciated talent and understood the power of a dramatic entrance. He saw the potential, not just for a business venture, but for a story of resilience and empowerment. He promised to be there, not just as a guest, but as a partner. The stage was set. Julian was rushing back oblivious, thinking he could still salvage his dignity. But he had no idea that the altar he was so desperately trying to reach would not be a place of forgiveness, but a crucible of his own making. He thought he was coming back to a weeping bride. He was about to meet a phoenix rising from the ashes, armed with a new vision and a formidable ally. The wedding might be cancelled, but the celebration of Isabel Moreau was just beginning. The initial shock had given way to a cold, clear focus. My heart still ached, a dull throb beneath my ribs, but my mind, usually filled with the delicate balance of sugar and flour, was now calculating, strategizing. The pain, once a paralyzing force, had transformed into a potent fuel. This wasn't just about Julian anymore. It was about every time I'd felt invisible, every subtle dismissal, every moment I'd put someone else's needs before my own. This was about reclaiming my narrative, not as a victim, but as a force to be reckoned with. "He's on his way," Colette confirmed, hanging up her phone after a quick call to a mutual friend who had seen Julian speeding out of Baton Rouge. "He sounds utterly terrified. He thinks he's coming back to beg for forgiveness and salvage his reputation." She gave me a sympathetic yet fiercely proud look. He has no idea what's waiting for him. I walked over to the full-length mirror, no longer seeing a bride in waiting, but a woman on the precipice of a profound change. The white wedding gown, once a symbol of purity and new beginnings, now felt like a costume for a play I no longer wished to perform. I reached for the elegant black dress I'd chosen, a simple yet sophisticated silhouette that hugged my curves in all the right places. As I slipped it on, the cool fabric against my skin felt like armor. It was a statement. No longer the demure, hopeful fiancée, but a woman who had faced betrayal and emerged, not broken, but sharpened. Colette, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of calculated efficiency. She'd already contacted Dominic, my former mentor, and explained the situation with an artful blend of journalistic objectivity and fierce loyalty to me. Dominic, a man of impeccable taste and even sharper business acumen, had immediately grasped the gravity and the opportunity. He wasn't just a chef. He was a visionary, and he recognized talent when he saw it. He'd always believed in my unique approach to pastry, my ability to infuse classic techniques with a touch of New Orleans magic. "Dominic is already on his way to the venue," Colette announced, her eyes sparkling. "He's speaking with the wedding planner now, making sure everything is reconfigured. He said to tell you he's ready to make an offer you can't refuse, and he's bringing the contract with him." A wave of warmth, mixed with a surge of adrenaline, washed over me. Dominic. He was more than just an ally. He was a testament to my own worth, a validation of my years of hard work and passion. He was the powerful, silent force I hadn't even realized I needed, a connection I'd nurtured years ago that was now poised to turn the tide. I remembered our last conversation months ago where he'd casually mentioned his expansion plans, his desire to find a partner who shared his vision for luxury patisseries. I'd dismissed it then, caught up in wedding plans. Now, it felt like fate. But this wasn't just about Dominic. As I looked at my reflection, a cold realization dawned on me about Julian. He had always been so charming, so seemingly supportive of my business. But looking back, there were subtle cracks I'd ignored. The way he'd sometimes dismiss my long hours, or subtly suggest I focus more on our future, rather than just baking. He'd even, on occasion, hinted at wanting to invest in sweet nothings, a proposition I'd always politely deferred, instinctively keeping my business finances meticulously separate. That was it. My hidden proof. Not a smoking gun, but a fortress. From the moment I opened Sweet Nothings 5 years ago, I had insisted on maintaining complete financial independence. Every receipt, every ledger, every contract was solely in my name, managed by my own accountant. Separate from Julian's seemingly impressive but ultimately opaque legal practice. I had always attributed it to my independent nature, my desire to build something entirely my own. Now, I saw it as an unconscious act of self-preservation. Julian had often talked about his future earnings as a civil rights lawyer, painting a picture of a comfortable life. But I'd never truly seen the hard numbers, only vague promises and grand pronouncements. My own business, however, was a tangible, thriving entity, built on solid ground. He had wanted to merge, to pool resources, but I had always subtly resisted. Now, that resistance was my shield. "Colette," I said, a new thought forming, "do you remember Julian's old firm? The one he left before starting his own practice last year?" She nodded, already pulling out her phone. "Of course. Why?" He always spoke vaguely about why he left. Said it was creative differences, philosophical disagreements, but something always felt off. "Can you do a quick check? See if there's anything at all about his departure? Any whispers? Any public records?" My intuition, honed by years of navigating the delicate balance of a kitchen, was screaming. Julian was too smooth, too perfect. There had to be something. Colette, with her journalist's instincts, was already on it. While I finished getting ready, she made a few discreet calls, tapping into her network of legal reporters and courthouse contacts. The air in the room, once heavy with despair, was now charged with an electric anticipation. We were no longer reacting. We were orchestrating. A few minutes later, Colette returned, her face a mask of controlled surprise. "Isabel, you won't believe this. It's not public record, but a source at his old firm hinted at irregularities. Not outright fraud, nothing that led to charges, but enough to make his departure less than amicable. Something about questionable billing practices on a pro bono case. They quietly parted ways to avoid a scandal. He wasn't fired, but he wasn't exactly celebrated either. It was swept under the rug. But the whispers are still there." My jaw tightened. Questionable billing practices on a civil rights case? The champion of the downtrodden? The hypocrisy was staggering. This wasn't just a moment of weakness with an ex. This was a pattern of questionable ethics. A glimpse into the true character of the man I was about to marry. This crucial discovery changed everything. It wasn't just about a broken heart. It was about a broken trust, a fundamental deception. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had betrayed the very principles he claimed to uphold. "This is perfect," I whispered, a cold satisfaction spreading through me. "This shows a pattern. This shows who he truly is, beyond the charming facade." This information, combined with the public humiliation of his abandonment, would be devastating. It wouldn't be a legal battle, but a social and professional annihilation. Colette looked at me, her eyes reflecting a mix of concern and admiration. "You're not just surviving this, Isabel. You're turning it into a weapon." "He gave me the weapon," I replied, a grim smile playing on my lips. "I'm just learning how to use it." We arrived at the venue, the historic Cassereau in the French Quarter, precisely when Julian was expected to. The air was thick with hushed whispers and nervous anticipation from the guests. They knew something was wrong, but they didn't know what. The jazz band played a somber tune, a stark contrast to the festive atmosphere that should have been. The wedding planner, a formidable woman named Genevieve, met us at the entrance, her expression a mix of professional calm and thinly veiled curiosity. "Everything is ready, Ms. Moreau," she said, her eyes flicking to my black dress, then to Colette, then to the imposing figure of Dominique Chevalier, who had just arrived and was already conferring with the band leader. I walked towards the makeshift altar, not with the hesitant steps of a jilted bride, but with the steady stride of a woman in control. The guests parted, their eyes wide with questions. My parents, their faces etched with worry, looked at me, bewildered by my attire. I gave them a reassuring, albeit enigmatic, smile. This was my moment. Just then, the grand iron gates of the courtyard creaked open. All heads turned. Julian, disheveled, his suit rumpled, his face pale and etched with a desperate hope, stood there. He scanned the crowd, his eyes finally landing on me. A flicker of confusion, then relief, crossed his features. He saw me, standing at the altar, waiting. But he didn't see the black dress. He didn't see Dominic. He didn't see the fire in my eyes. He saw only what he wanted to see: his chance at redemption, his escape from public shame. He started walking towards me, a forced smile on his lips, ready to deliver his carefully rehearsed apology. He thought he was walking towards forgiveness. He was walking into a meticulously laid trap. The grand iron gates creaked open, and Julian stood there, a ghostly figure against the vibrant backdrop of the French Quarter courtyard. His suit, once crisp, was now rumpled, his hair disheveled, and his face a mask of desperate hope. He scanned the faces of our assembled guests, my family, his family, our friends, colleagues, all of whom had gathered for a wedding, not a public execution. His eyes, wide and searching, finally landed on me, standing at the altar. A flicker of relief, almost palpable, crossed his features. He saw me, yes, but he didn't see me. He saw the woman he had abandoned, waiting, perhaps broken, perhaps ready to forgive. He saw his escape. He started walking, a forced, placating smile plastered on his lips, a carefully rehearsed apology undoubtedly forming in his mind. He was still playing a role, still trying to control the narrative, but the narrative had already been rewritten. As he approached, his gaze finally dropped to my dress, the elegant black silk. His smile faltered, a ripple of confusion replacing his relief. He probably thought it was a dramatic gesture, a mourning for our lost day. He had no idea it was my battle armor. He stopped a few feet from me, his eyes pleading, his voice a strained whisper. "Isabel, my love, I'm so sorry. I had a moment of madness. Serafina, she ambushed me. I swear I was coming back. Please tell me we can still do this. Tell me you forgive me." He reached out a hand, as if to touch me, to reclaim me. I took a step back, my gaze unwavering, cold as the Mississippi in winter. "Don't touch me, Julian." My voice, though quiet, carried through the hushed courtyard, each word a hammer blow. The guests gasped, a collective intake of breath. My parents looked horrified, his parents looked mortified. Julian's face drained of color. He looked around, suddenly aware of the sea of expectant, judging eyes. The jazz band had stopped playing, the silence now deafening, broken only by the distant sounds of the city. He was trapped, center stage, with nowhere to hide. "Forgive you," I continued, my voice gaining strength, each syllable precise. "Julian, you didn't just have a moment of madness. You abandoned me on our wedding day to run off to Baton Rouge with your ex-fiancé. While our friends and family gathered here, you were laughing, holding hands with Serafina Dubois in a public cafe." I paused, letting the words hang in the air, letting the weight of the betrayal sink in. That wasn't a moment, Julian. That was a choice. A deliberate, calculated choice. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Faces turned from Julian to me, then back to him, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock, then to outrage. Julian's face was a study in horror. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was exposed. "And you know what the worst part is, Julian?" I pressed on, my voice laced with a bitter irony. "It wasn't just the betrayal of our love. It was the betrayal of trust. The trust I placed in you. The trust our families placed in you. The trust your clients place in you." It was at this moment that Dominic Chevalier stepped forward. He moved with an effortless grace, his imposing figure exuding an aura of quiet authority. He stood beside me, a pillar of strength, his presence a stark contrast to Julian's crumbling composure. He wasn't just a guest anymore. He was a statement. "Julian Thorne," Dominic began, his voice deep and resonant, cutting through the stunned silence. I arrived in New Orleans expecting to celebrate a union. Instead, I find myself witnessing a profound disservice. Isabel Moreau is not just a talented chef. She is a woman of integrity, vision, and extraordinary resilience. He turned to me, a warm, encouraging smile on his face. "Isabel, I believe this is the perfect moment to announce your true new beginning." My heart swelled with a mix of gratitude and fierce determination. This was it, the turning point. I looked at Julian, his eyes wide with a dawning horror, as if he were watching a train wreck in slow motion, unable to avert his gaze. "Indeed, Dominic," I said, meeting his gaze, then turning back to the stunned assembly. "Julian, you came back expecting a wedding. But what you found is a new chapter for me. A chapter that you, ironically, helped to write." I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. For years, I've poured my heart and soul into sweet nothings. I've dreamed of expanding, of creating something truly revolutionary in the world of luxury patisserie. I gestured to Dominic. "Today, I am proud to announce that my dream is becoming a reality. Dominic Chevalier, a name synonymous with culinary excellence, has approached me with an extraordinary proposition. He is launching a new high-end chain of patisseries across the country, and he wants me, Isabelle Moreau, to be his co-founder and chief chef." A collective gasp swept through the courtyard, followed by a ripple of excited whispers. This wasn't just a consolation prize. This was a meteoric rise. Julian stood frozen, his face ashen, his jaw slack. He had come back to beg, to salvage, and instead, he was witnessing my ascent, an ascent he had unwittingly facilitated. The man who had dismissed my just baking was now watching me step onto a national stage. Dominic then held up a sleek, leather-bound document. "This isn't just a handshake agreement. This is a multi-million-dollar contract, securing Isabelle's position and her brand's future. It's a testament to her unparalleled talent and her unwavering dedication. And as a gesture of profound respect and admiration for her strength today, we are signing it right here, right now." He produced a pen, and with a flourish, offered it to me. I took it, my hand steady, my heart thrumming with a triumphant beat. I signed my name, Isabelle Moreau, not Thorne, with a flourish that felt like a declaration of independence. Dominic signed his, and then, with a grand gesture, he raised a glass of champagne that a waiter had discreetly placed in his hand. "To Isabelle Moreau," he announced, his voice booming with genuine pride. "To her new beginning, her unparalleled talent, and her incredible resilience. May this day mark the start of an extraordinary journey." The guests erupted in applause, a wave of cheers and congratulations washing over me. My parents, initially bewildered, now looked at me with tears of pride in their eyes. Friends rushed forward, embracing me, their faces alight with joy for my unexpected triumph. The atmosphere, once heavy with dread, had transformed into a vibrant celebration of success and empowerment. Julian, meanwhile, was a broken man. He stood there, alone in the center of the courtyard, the applause ringing in his ears like a cruel mockery. He tried to speak, but his voice was lost in the joyous din. He saw the future he had thrown away, not just a wife, but a partner whose professional star was now ascending far beyond his own. He had wanted to control me, to diminish me, and instead, he had propelled me to heights he could only dream of. But the final, crushing blow was yet to come. Just as the celebration reached its peak, a commotion erupted near the gates. Serafina Dubois, looking impeccably styled but visibly flustered, pushed her way through the crowd, her phone clutched in her hand. The photos of her and Julian had clearly gone viral, and she was here to do damage control, to distance herself, to save her own carefully constructed image. "Julian! What is going on?" she shrieked, her voice shrill and panicked. "This is a disaster! Everyone's talking! You told me you'd handle it!" She hadn't come to support him. She had come to blame him, to protect herself. Her arrival, a desperate attempt to salvage her own reputation, only served to further expose Julian's pathetic state and her manipulative nature. Julian stared at her, his face a mixture of despair and utter defeat. The woman he had chosen over me, the woman he claimed had manipulated him, was now publicly denouncing him. The irony was exquisite. He had lost everything, and the very person he had sacrificed our future for was now turning on him. I looked at Julian one last time, a ghost of a smile on my lips. He had wanted to come back to the ceremony. He had, but he hadn't imagined who would be waiting for him. Not a heartbroken bride, but a formidable businesswoman, surrounded by allies, celebrating her triumph over his betrayal. The wedding was off, but the grand opening of Isabelle Moreau's new empire had just begun. and Julian Thorne was merely a footnote in her spectacular rise. The applause eventually subsided, replaced by the joyful chatter of guests celebrating my unexpected victory. Julian, utterly humiliated, stood frozen for a few agonizing moments, caught between the furious Serafina and the jubilant crowd. He looked at me one last time, his eyes hollow, filled with a despair so profound it almost made me flinch. Almost. Then, without a word, he turned and stumbled out of the courtyard, Serafina hot on his heels, still berating him. Their dramatic exit was the final, pathetic act in his self-orchestrated downfall. A profound sense of calm settled over me, a peace I hadn't felt in years. The knot of anxiety that had lived in my stomach for so long, fueled by Julian's subtle manipulations and my own unspoken fears, had unraveled. I was free, not just from Julian, but from the invisible chains of expectation and the need for external validation. Dominic, ever the gracious host, raised his glass again. "To the future, Isabel? To the future," I echoed, clinking my glass against his. The champagne tasted like victory, crisp and effervescent. The rest of the evening was a blur of congratulations, genuine smiles, and heartfelt embraces. My parents, initially shocked by the dramatic turn of events, now beamed with a pride that warmed me to my core. My mother, usually reserved, pulled me into a tight hug, whispering, "You are so much stronger than I ever knew, my darling." My father, ever the businessman, was already discussing expansion strategies with Dominic. Colette, my steadfast ally, stood by my side, her journalist's notebook tucked away, replaced by a celebratory glass. "You know," she said, a mischievous glint in her eye, "this is going to be quite the story. Bride-to-be turns wedding into multi-million-dollar business launch after fiancé's scandalous disappearance." I laughed, a genuine, unburdened laugh. "Just make sure you get my good side in the photos, Colette." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The story of my wedding-turned-launch went viral, picked up by local news and then national lifestyle blogs. It was a sensation, a testament to resilience and female empowerment. Sweet Nothings saw an immediate surge in customers, eager to support the chef who stood up for herself. Julian, on the other hand, faced a swift and brutal reckoning. The whispers about his irregularities at his old firm, combined with the public scandal of his wedding day disappearance, quickly destroyed his professional reputation. Clients abandoned him, and his fledgling law practice crumbled. Serafina, true to form, publicly disavowed him, posting a tearful video claiming she was manipulated and misled by Julian, painting herself as an innocent victim. Her followers, however, weren't entirely convinced, and her own brand took a hit from the association. Julian disappeared from the New Orleans scene, a cautionary tale whispered in legal circles. My life, however, soared. Dominic and I immediately began working on the new patisserie chain, Moreau and Chevalier. Our first flagship store, a blend of classic French elegance and New Orleans charm, was set to open in New York within 6 months. I was deeply involved in every aspect, from menu development to interior design, pouring all my passion and creativity into this new venture. It was exhilarating, challenging, and deeply fulfilling. There were still moments, of course, when a pang of sadness would hit me. A stray memory of a shared laugh with Julian, a forgotten dream we once held. But these moments were fleeting, quickly overshadowed by the immense gratitude and excitement for my new path. The pain had not vanished entirely, but it had transformed into a quiet strength, a reminder of what I had overcome. I had learned that true love wasn't about being completed by another, but about being whole within myself. My relationship with my family deepened. They saw a side of me they hadn't known existed, a fierce independence and an unyielding spirit. My bond with Colette, already unbreakable, became even stronger, forged in the fires of that unforgettable day. Looking back, I realized Julian's betrayal, though devastating at the time, was the greatest gift I could have received. It forced me to confront my own worth, to stand up for myself, and to seize an opportunity I might have otherwise let slip by. I had been so focused on building a life with someone that I had almost forgotten to build a life for myself. Now, as I sit in my new office, overlooking the bustling streets of New York, a blueprint for our next patisserie spread across my desk. I often think about that day, the day my wedding was supposed to happen, the day my fiancé disappeared, the day I found him with his ex. It was the day everything fell apart, and the day everything truly began. I am Isabel Moreau. I am a co-founder, a chief chef, and a woman who learned that sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about tearing someone down, but about building yourself up, higher and stronger than you ever thought possible. And as for Julian, well, some people just aren't meant to have their cake and eat it too.